Good morning. The hearing board of the South Coast Air Quality Management District is in session. Today is Tuesday, April 23rd, 2019. The time is 9:20 a.m. and we are meeting in the hearing board room in Diamond Bar. We have one matter on the calendar for today, and that is Veer Petro Partners, Inc., case number 6140-1 for appeal of the issuance of a permit to construct the conditions. Who is representing Veer Petro Partners today?
Kevin Bibian, I'm the owner.
And
I'm the consultant, Ahmad Gaderi with ANS Engineering, who worked on the project.
thank you. And who is going to take the lead in terms of presenting your case today?
Mr. Bibian has a presentation that he likes to make.
Okay.
And if you don't mind, we'll start with that, and I'm here to answer any questions.
Okay, we'll get to that in a moment. So if you could just restate one at a time, each of your names, spell your names for the record, and just tell us your title as well. That would be helpful.
Kevin, Kevin, last name Bibian, B like boy, I like Ingrid, B like boy, A like apple, Y, A, N like Nancy. I'm the owner.
Ahmad Gaderi, that's A-H-M-A-D. Last name is Gaderi, G-H-A-D-E-R-I, with ANS Engineering. And we're the consultant who was working with your staff during the permit process.
Thank you very much. And who is representing the executive officer today?
Stacy Pruitt for the executive officer.
Thank you, Ms. Pruitt. I'm going to ask at this time, before we begin, for everyone who wishes to testify today, give any kind of evidence today, to please rise to be sworn in. Please raise your right hand. Do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
I do.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Gadari and Mr. Bibian. Let me just start by explaining how the process will work today. Given that your company, Veer Petro Partners, is appealing the permit today, you will begin with today because you have the burden of proof in today's hearing. We'll ask if you'd like, and you may waive it if you prefer to just go right into your presentation. If you want to give a short opening statement in terms of just stating for the board what is your position and why you're here today. I'm going to go to Ms. Pruitt and ask for the district's opening to let us know their position in terms of defending against the appeal. And then I will turn to you, and you may give any evidence you wish. We'll try to take it one at a time if you each have different testimony or evidence to present. And then I'm going to turn it to Ms. Pruitt to ask questions, if she has any. And then the board will ask questions if we have any. And then similarly, once you're complete and you're done presenting all of your evidence for today, I'm going to turn to the district, and they will present any evidence, any witnesses they wish to present, and you'll have an opportunity to ask questions if you would like, and the board will also ask questions. And then when we're done, I'll see if there's anyone who wishes to give any public testimony or statements, and then we will actually deliberate and make a decision today. So at this time, if you would like, I'll ask Mr. Bibian, if you have an opening statement. This would be just a brief recitation of why you're here and your position.
Dear members of the board. Dear members of the board, my name is Kevin Bibian. My partners and I purchased this subject site in 2018, and prior to that, since 2016, I have been working with the City of Inglewood to obtain the necessary approvals for reconstruction of the existing service station at this location. The subject site has been operating as a gas station since the late 1940s and was operational as of late 2003-2004, according to one of our partners that was previously the property manager with the previous owner. As part of our permitting process, we filed the necessary application through your agency to obtain the necessary approvals for the proposed underground storage, tank equipment, and dispensers that we are proposing as part of our proposed raise and rebuild. Upon review of our application by your engineering staff, they have classified our location as a brand-new service station project and hence requiring us to comply with Rule 1401.1, which requires that the facility-wide cancer risk and hazard indices should not exceed 1 in 1 million and 1.0 respectively at any school boundary within 1,000 feet of a facility. South Coast AQMD's classification of our site as a brand-new facility has limited our volume to 80,000 gallons per month, which is extremely low, and this limitation will have a huge financial impact on our proposed project, and we will not be able to compete with other similar facilities located nearby. In our research, we have reviewed Rule 1401.1 and per Rule 1.401.1C amended June 5th, 2015, the following definitions. Number 3, existing facility means any facility that A, demonstrates to the satisfaction of the executive officer that it had equipment requiring a permit to construct/operate that was in operation prior to November 4th, 2005. This site was operational prior to 2005. City of Inglewood's records can be provided as to factual operation of our site. In fact, as of recently as 5 months ago, we had existing underground storage tanks at this location, and we have permit documents from Los Angeles County Public Works, which confirms that this was an existing gas station. We removed the tanks 5 months ago. Based on these facts, we respectfully request that the board to direct your staff to consider this facility as an existing facility and allow the application to be reviewed. Similar to other such facilities, and allow the facility-wide cancer risk and hazard indices to be increased to 10 in 1 million, and allow your staff to increase the volume cap at our facility so we can be competitive with such other operations in the area. This project is costing us approximately $4 million and still going, and will improve the site tremendously, provide more jobs, provide additional tax revenue, and is a project that is specifically supported by the City of Inglewood. I thank you for your time, and I'm available to answer any questions.
Thank you. Before we move on to Ms. Pruitt for her opening, I thought, given your opening remarks, I should just let you know who we are. We are an independent hearing board. So I know you mentioned your staff and the district. We actually are independent of the district, and we are generally 5. One of our members is ill. We're generally a board of 5 members, and we are appointed by the governing board of the district, but we act independently, just so you know. Ms. Pruitt, your opening, please.
Good morning. This opening will be relatively brief. There was a permit at the facility at the location 3611 West Imperial Highway in the city of Inglewood in the county of Los Angeles that went inactive in 1994. And they had until 1995 to reinstate it, but it was not. The inspector went to the site in 2002, and it was out of business. And to our understanding, it has been out of business until this time. So for some 17 plus years, it has been defunct and non-operational. We do not believe that it is an existing station in that it was not used for that purpose. We have evidence that it is, at this state, just a parcel of land, and it has nothing attached to it, no indicia that it is or was a service station, as well as the fact that it was not permitted for, again, over 17 years. We would like to hear the evidence that would be brought forth, and if they have any evidence from the city of Inglewood or Los Angeles, we would consider it. However, the rule was properly applied in this instance. And the standard, since this is not a variance, but instead an appeal, is that the rule was applied incorrectly, and is the district's position that we will prove that it was not.
Thank you. I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Bibian, Mr. Gadari, well, first of all, would you like to take your opening as evidence, as testimony, since you were sworn in, Mr. Bibian?
Yes, please.
Okay. So then, sticking with Mr. Bibian, do you have, as Ms. Pruitt mentioned, do you have evidence to present to the board with regard to the fact that the facility was existing as is defined under the rules, and would you like to provide additional testimony at this time?
Yeah, so what I have with me here today is Department of Building and Safety records from the city of Inglewood showing the, building permits for when the gas station was originally approved. Additionally, I know you guys work closely with, I know AQMD works closely with the Department of Public Works, LA County. So, we have a permit to remove the tanks and an approved permit to reinstall the tanks, because the existing tanks at the location were single wall fiberglass tanks. And the new rule for today is obviously to have double wall fiberglass tanks, which we are proceeding to go ahead and install.
Do you have, I guess we would need 6 copies. Do you have 6 copies of what
I
you?
brought 4 copies, that's what it's.
Okay, we'll need to have additional copies made. We'll need one for Ms. Pruitt, we'll need one for the clerk, and we'll need 4 additional for each board member. Okay, we need more than that, okay.
One clarification, if you don't mind. The copies that we have are the documents from Building and Safety. We do not have LA County copies in our possession, but we can provide that to the board and to Ms. Pruitt as well. My apologies, we don't have those in our possession.
If you don't have in your possession today, then we would not be able to consider them today.
I can contact my office and get it emailed to me, and we can go somewhere here, print it. I don't want to take the board's time, but is that something I can?
Well, what we'll need to do is take a short break to make sure we have copies of everything you wish to present today. If in that time that we take off the record, you can get whatever additional evidence you'd like emailed, we can try and do that. But we can't take too much time.
Of course,
Of course, we would like it if you would come completely.
Our apologies, this is the first time we
Prepared.
appeared before the board, and they were not ready when they came by. So.
Okay. So what we'll do is we'll take a break. Is there a place where they can go when we can direct them?
You need to go, we have a library here, and it has a photocopy machine, so if you go over to where the security guards are, they can show you where that library is.
Okay,
We'll need 8 copies.
sure.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. We'll be back.
Okay, so we will take a 15-minute break, during which time we'll get any documents together, try to do it all at the same time. So we'll come back on the record at 10 of 10. We're off the record.
We got the oldest copy, just to show how far it went back, and they have other documents in the staff too. This is the oldest one that we have on.
No, I'm just saying, I've never seen this one, just wondering if you could show me one,
Sure. And this is from LA County. Permit that we just got for the existing things. And the map from there.
We're back on the record. Just for the record, when the board asks for parties to come back at a certain time, we expect parties to be back at that time. If you're not ready, you can always come back and ask the board for additional time, and the board will consider it at that time. But to leave a room full of people waiting is not appropriate.
My apologies, we were waiting for one more representative to show up. That's what we're trying to, she couldn't find where the location was, so.
Understood. However, the board was not apprised of that, and the board had said to please be back at 10 up. Every other person was back in this room.
Our apologies.
Thank you. In addition, if there's any other evidence at this point that you do not have with you, we will either have to adjourn to another day for a hearing or continue without it. I think we now have had adequate opportunity to gather evidence, which should have been here with you. Okay, so we have received 2 documents. I'm going to mark them. The first one says in the upper right-hand corner, application for permit building with the number 1, and I'm going to mark that as Exhibit 1. Also, we received a second document, which says form valid July 1st, 2017 to June 30th, 2018, closure authorization for hazardous substance underground storage tank. We're going to mark that as exhibit number 2. In addition, we've all received, and I assume that Ms. Pruitt, you've given copies also to petitioner? Okay. We have a one-page document from the district entitled Proposed Rule 1401.1 Staff Report, and we will mark that as Exhibit A, as an apple. And we have 3 photographs. They're a little bit dark. One, sort of a faraway view of a facility. The next one, we're closer up to the chain link fence, and the third one, we're even closer to the chain link fence. So we're going to mark those in order as B as in boy 1, B as in boy 2, and B as in boy 3. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Mr. Bibian. If you'd like to introduce the documents we've just marked as Exhibits 1 and 2, and present any additional testimony you wish at this time.
So for Exhibit 1, as you can see, this is a copy of the building permit I obtained from the city of Inglewood. So in 1945, there was a permit issued for the location for work to the original owner of the location. The second page is for 1947 for some stucco work at the location. The page number 3 on January 28, 1948, it's for some additional work, which you can see, I believe, where it says type and group. It says gas tanks. It should say next to number of plans, there's a type and a group. It says gas tanks. And then if you go to the 4th page on January 28, 1948, that one shows as well issued by the city of Inglewood gas storage, which referring to, something to do with the underground gas tanks that were at the location. The permit fee was $200 at that time. And if you go to Exhibit 2, this is the copy of the LA County closure authorization permit from LA County Department of Public Works that was issued to us. There was a total of 5 underground storage tanks at the location. So as you can see, they gave us the authorization to close those tanks and remove them from the facility in order for us to install our new underground storage tanks. And then the second page on Exhibit 2, which will show you the site plan, which was how the site, looked whenever we bought the site. As you can see, there's a block building, which was approximately 2,500 square feet. There was a existing mechanic shop at the facility. There was a canopy with 4 MPDs, so 8 positions for vehicles to pump gas. And then the 5 underground storage tanks in front of the mechanic shop going towards Imperial Highway. So the photos that, if you see right now, we've demolished everything, due to the fact that we want to start construction. So, but this site plan that you see is how the site looked whenever we purchased the property, with all the existing equipment on site.
Thank you. Do you have any other testimony you wish to give at this time?
Not at this time.
Okay. I'll turn it over to Ms. Pruitt for questions then.
Thank you. Exhibit 1 just shows that in the 40s that it was a gas station, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And Exhibit 2 shows that you had permission to remove old tanks that were there.
Correct.
And you don't know whether or not the station went inactive, do you?
When they purchased the site at that time was inactive, but before that.
Wait, I'm sorry. Let's, Mr. Bibian, if you know the answers to the questions, I'll stay with you. If you don't, then we can move on to Mr. Godari once we're finished.
Yeah, so whenever we purchased the property, the site was inactive, but according to my partner,
And are you aware that once a site goes inactive, any facility that comes afterward is a new source?
yeah, but according to your guys'
No, it's a question.
oh, am I aware?
Are you aware that the station went inactive?
I mean, yeah, I purchased it as a closed station, yeah.
Thank you. And are you aware that when a facility is inactive, anything afterward is a new source?
No, I didn't know that.
And your appeal is based upon the wrong standard was applied because it was at some point an active station.
Correct.
But you don't know that it was active for any time prior to approximately 17 years, is that correct?
It was definitely active.
When you purchased the station, was it an active
It
facility?
was not an active location, yeah.
Before you purchased the station, did you have the opportunity to consider the area and what was around the station?
No.
You didn't have that opportunity?
What do you mean by consider the
Did you have the opportunity to look around the facility, the neighboring area?
No. Like, check the property, you mean? If you can make it a clear
Okay,
question.
maybe,
yes, please.
let me
Thank you.
figure out how to.
Yeah.
Did you, before you purchased the property, did you visit the property?
Did I visit the property? I did not.
So
So
you-
one of my partners, as I stated in my opening statement, was the property manager for the location with the old owner. So me personally, I never visited the property until after we purchased it.
Okay, so you purchased it sight unseen.
Yeah.
Were you aware that there was a school with some 300 children less than 146 feet from the center of the property to the school?
No, I wasn't aware because I know across the street is a different city limitation, which is City of Hawthorne. So when we were dealing with City of Inglewood, they didn't mention that to us.
Did you notice that once you went to the property?
Did I notice there was a school? I did not know it was an active school, no.
Okay. Did you consider, prior to purchasing the property, whether it was a good compatible use, whether having a gas station in that area would be a good use for the environment, for the community?
Yes,
But you said that you weren't aware that there was a school less than 100 feet from the fence line.
correct. It's not, you know.
There's no question before you, thank you. And is it your position that, as it stands now, you can't get enough throughput at the facility based upon the permit that you were issued?
Correct.
And is it correct that your throughput is 80,000, at 80,000 gallons per month?
I believe that's what you guys issued, yes.
And what kind of throughput would you be requesting?
About 350,000 gallons.
And you said you researched 1401.1 thoroughly. Was that correct in your opening?
Correct, to my understanding.
And did you happen to notice the purpose of 1401.1?
Yeah, to provide health and protection, based on the documentation you just provided me, yeah.
For children at schools, is the
Correct.
rest of what it says?
Correct.
And you stated that you believe that the executive officer did not issue the permit properly, applying Rule 1401.1?
Executive officer is AQMD?
the AQMD.
Oh, yeah, correct.
Is there any reason why you feel that you should be exempt from being a new source in that there was an inactive permit some 17 years prior and nothing in between that time?
Can you repeat that?
Meaning that you weren't an existing facility during that 17-year gap. Do you agree that you were not an existing facility after the permit went inactive?
No. The
You
site
think-
was an existing location.
So an existing location, but you agree that it was inactive, or do you know?
So you told me, do I know if it's inactive?
Yes, do you know that it was, whether or not it was inactive during those 17 years before you purchased it?
No. Like I said, when I purchased the property, it was inactive. I didn't know it was inactive for 17 years.
Okay, but it was inactive when you purchased it?
When I purchased it, correct.
Nothing further.
Thank you. Do you have any evidence today or any knowledge, firsthand knowledge of when after the 1940s? So we have exhibits that show in the 1940s it was active, but do you know when it was last in operation?
I don't have any documentation of that.
Okay. Okay, so I was going to ask which school is nearby or how close the school is. Do you have firsthand knowledge? I know Ms. Pruitt indicated in her questioning that it was 146 feet. Do you know how close the school is?
I mean, after the, AQMD issued us the permit, I became aware that there was a school, but like I was trying to state to her right now, it's, not like a, public school that we're talking about, that buses are coming and things like that. To my understanding from standing at my property looking at, the school, it seems like some after-school program type of school. It's not like a school where kids are getting bused to the location in thousands a day.
Are you trying to state that you didn't know it was a school, or are you trying to say it is not a school?
No, I didn't know it was a school.
Okay,
To my
that's your
understanding, a
testimony.
school is like with buses and things like that.
So you weren't aware of it,
Correct.
is what you're trying to say. But so you don't know at this point how far away that school is?
In terms about footage, I don't know the exact
Okay.
footage. Yeah.
Thank you. I think those are my questions. Anyone else have questions? Ms. Bird?
Is this the first gas station you've purchased?
No, we have 15 locations that we have active permits with the AQMD at this
Okay,
time.
so you have 15, and you have active permits, so you knew that you would need a permit when you purchased this
Of course.
gas station? Okay. But you did not inquire about the requirements prior to purchasing the gas station?
What do you mean by?
The AQMD permit requirements prior to purchasing the gas station? Did you research that
I mean,
at all?
I had my consultant, Mr.
It's okay. We'll go to him when we need to. But as far as you know,
I mean, I hired my firm.
you hired a
to-
consultant?
Yes.
Okay. When did you submit the information to the AQMD for the permit for this?
My firm, once again, my firm took care of all of that.
Okay. So is it then your testimony that things relating to the regulatory operation of this project all were handled by your consultant? Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay, so they would know better. Okay, thank you. Then I'll have to ask those questions of consultant.
Mr. Balagopalan?
Mr. Veer, Mr., when did you say you purchased the property?
In 2018, I believe, I closed my escrow.
And you said the general manager worked for the previous gas station, that was your partner or something, you said?
No, my partner was the property manager for the previous owner.
Do you knowledge, or from conversation with the property manager, when was the last time the gas station was in operation there?
I'm not sure about that.
When you purchased it, it was not in operation. There was no gas station operating at that location. Is that
Correct.
And do you, any idea how many years it has stayed not in operation there?
I'm not sure.
Okay, thank you.
Senator?
I think you suggested that this school is not like a regular school where buses are coming in and busing kids, correct? You did say that, correct?
Correct.
Or to your knowledge, is it a charter school?
I don't believe it's a charter, because I grew up here as a kid, so I attended charter school and public school, so it's not like a charter school or a high school or a middle school, elementary. It's like definitely some sort of after-school program type of teaching facility, to my understanding.
So it's a regular school?
I mean, you can consider it school, once again. I consider it a school, in the amount of thousands, but.
Did you investigate to determine when the school was first operating as a school?
From my conversation with the city of Inglewood, but they could not provide so much information due to the fact that that falls into the city of Hawthorne. From my understanding, with the documentation I submitted to you guys today, the school was 100% constructed after the gas station was constructed. But I wasn't able to reach out to the city of Hawthorne to get that information.
You mean in the 1940s?
Correct.
Thank you.
The gas station was there first.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I just want to be very clear. I want to know what the issues are we're considering. The issue that you have is that you believe, it's your position, that you were an existing gas station. Is that correct?
Yes.
It is not that this is not a school within the rule.
No, that's not my fault.
Okay, just want to make sure. Anyone else have any questions for Mr. Bibian? Okay. Mr. Godari, would you like to add testimony? We can also just turn it over to questions for you, but if you have,
If you don't mind, just a couple of minor items.
no, you should, yes.
Thank you. Ms. Pruitt indicated that one of the questions you asked was, does Mr. Bibian understand that once a site is closed, then it becomes considered, when you reopen it, it becomes considered a new facility.
Correction, I said once the permit is inactive.
Okay, because I just wanted for clarification, because there are sites, Mr. Bibian has another facility that the site was closed, but the permit was active and remained active, and the property owner paid the fees every year. And we were able to reopen the facility without any restrictions, and there was a school nearby. So I just wanted to clarify that, because one of the items that we want to be clear is, as Mr. Bibian indicated, he bought it in 2018. If the previous owner failed to keep the permit active by possibly not paying the fees, I feel that he shouldn't be penalized for the site to be considered as new source. So I just wanted to clarify that portion. As far as the existing facility, again, this site, I see the pictures that was submitted by Mr. Pruitt. These pictures are new pictures, and these are after the site, because they started construction. We have a valid permit from you guys. We have a valid permit from City of Inglewood, and the pictures you're looking at are pictures of the site recently, which is about like 4 or 6 weeks ago, when they started demoing the site in preparation of getting construction started. So this is not the way they bought the site. The site was, we have pictures of the site where it wasn't a gas station with the canopy and the tanks and everything. And so just wanted to clarify that.
Okay, so it's your testimony that these photos are recent, and so these photos were not before the executive officer or the district when they made their permitting decision?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Well, we'll take that into account when they're introduced by the district. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, lastly, as Mr. Bibian indicated, it's always been a gas station. We have documentation that you saw from 1948. Definitely the school or the church that runs the facility was built after the station. So the station has had a long history of 80 years of, close to 80 years of operation. And that's it. So if I can answer any questions.
First, I'm going to turn it to Ms. Pruitt, then Senator has a question. But if you could also I don't think I understood the fees that were paid for permits. That was to the district all these years, or to the
I'm asking.
City of Inglewood?
No. I'm saying, as an example, I was telling Ms. Pruitt that we do have another site that Mr. Babian just recently purchased, where the site was inactive as far as operationally, but the property owner had kept the permit by paying their annual fees, and so therefore the permit remained active, and we were able to reopen the facility.
Okay.
That's another
I
site, but as
just
an
wanted
example.
to understand what your testimony had been. Ms. Pruitt, questions?
Good afternoon, good morning. But you do understand that each facility is considered on a case-by-case basis?
Oh, sure.
Okay. And we don't know at
Understand.
this point, the situation from the other property?
No, I understand. I was just using it as an example, just to address your question. So.
Okay, thank you. But you do know that there was, at the time of purchase, a school near the facility. Is that correct?
That's what we indicated on our application, yeah. It says there's a school nearby.
Do you know
If I'm
if
not
do you know if the school is the Environmental Charter Middle School?
My apologies, I don't have it off the top of my head. Sorry about that.
And did you investigate whether or not it was a what kind of school it was, or that there was a school there, or,
No.
and did you?
We did indicate that there's a school because we send notifications out to the school during the process.
So you were aware there was a school there, and you sent out notifications to the school?
Per your requirements, we have, yes. But the issue is considering this an existing facility versus a new entity. So that's the question.
I'm aware of thank you, the issue.
Not the fact that it's a school or not.
Right, right. I agree with you. Now, you said, if I am to understand you correctly, that it's not, Mr., I'm sorry, your name? Bibian, that it's not his fault if the previous owner didn't keep up with his permit. Was that your statement?
That's our opinion, yes.
But Mr. Bibian knew that it was inactive at the time. Well, excuse me, I can't ask you what he knew. Did you know that the site was inactive at the time of the facility of purchase?
At the time when he purchased, it was inactive.
Thank you. Did you by any chance advise him about the ramifications of buying an inactive fueling station?
There was no discussion on that.
And did you discuss any of Rule 1401.1 with Mr. Bibian?
No discussions were asked.
Nothing further.
Senator, you had questions?
For clarification, and now we know it's a charter school, when was it activated? Anybody can answer that question?
I'm not sure it has relevance to the issue, but if you want to know generally, I'm sure maybe
Just for my
someone knows.
information.
I don't know. I just know that it was there at the time the permits were. I can.
That's an interesting point. Well, Mr. Vivian, you said you grew up in the area, correct?
Not in the city of Inglewood. I grew up in Los Angeles.
I thought you said that area,
No.
indicating to me that you really knew that area.
No, I said I grew up in the city of I grew up here in the city of Los Angeles, county of Los Angeles.
So you're not familiar at all with that section of town? Inglewood.
No, I own a station not too far away, but I don't know about the city of
Let's get it
Inglewood.
right now. You don't live too far away.
I'm sorry?
You said you don't live too far away from that site?
No, I said I currently work close to that area. I just bought a station a couple months ago near that area.
But were you familiar with the area before you acquired the station?
No,
Did you ever live in the vicinity of the area nearby?
no, sir.
Did you ever know anybody bought gas from that station at any point in time?
No, because I had no business in that area.
Thank you.
Wait, Mr. Balagopalan has questions.
Yes, Mr.
Oh,
Goodall.
I'm sorry, you're right. We're skipping around, and I didn't catch that, thank you. We're going to go back to Mr. Godari if you have questions.
Yeah, that's who I had questions. So, Mr. Gadari, do you know when the station was when was the last time it was in operation?
My apologies, I don't have that information.
Okay, you had testimony from Ms. Pruitt that it was the inspector was there in 2002 and noted that it was not out of business. Would that be a time frame you think, or do you have any idea how long it has not been an active station that was in operation?
No, that information, in fact, what Ms. Pruitt indicated, she disclosed that last week when we had a conference, but before that, I don't have that information.
But it was dormant for a while, or not in operation. How many years you think, or roughly how long?
My apologies, I don't want to guess because I only know it when Mr. Bibian purchased it at that time.
I think we shouldn't speculate. I think we'll hear from the district if there's no evidence from the petitioner with regard to when it was inactive.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Byrd?
Mr. Gandari, when were you hired by Mr. Bibian?
2016.
2016, okay. So I'm not, I'm not familiar with your firm, but prior to purchase of a facility like this, do you typically do due diligence for permits and that kind of thing that might be required?
We did
For
due diligence, I'm sorry, we did due diligence with the city of Inglewood, and we obtained the approvals
Okay.
for the project.
And did you have any kind of consultation with the Air Quality Management District prior?
Prior to 2016?
No, prior to the purchase?
We had an application in with AQMD.
So your application was in prior to the purchase?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I'm sorry, can I ask a question on that?
Sure.
No. Did you just indicate before that in your application to the district, you checked off that there was a school?
If I recall correctly, I don't have the application in front of me, but it should
Okay.
have been, yes.
So then that would indicate that you did know of the existence of the school prior to the purchase?
We checked that. I want to double check. I don't have the application in front of me, but my employees do check for that information.
Okay, thank you.
And when you were in contact with Mr. Bibian, you knew that there was a gas station and that there was a school? Just no knowledge of those two things?
When did you submit the application?
It was before 2018. You have the application.
I think your testimony was that it was submitted in 2016, prior to...
No. The application was not submitted to AQMD 2016.
Okay.
Application to City of Inglewood was submitted.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I just
I
want to
heard you
clarify
say,
that. No.
when I was asking, I was
No.
referring to
Oh,
district
sorry, no.
applications, not to the city of
No,
Inglewood.
because we don't submit the application until we have the entitlement from the city.
Okay, okay. So you submitted the application to the AQMD in 2018?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that makes a little bit more sense. Okay, and you knew of the purchase prior to 2018?
That they were looking at it, yes, ma'am.
Right, because you started working with them
Yes,
in
ma'am.
2016.
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay, I just want to make sure I did get the right places in. Okay. This is a question that I'm just trying to tie in whether or not you should have known. Why did you remove the underground storage tanks?
We, as part of the reconstruction process, the existing tanks cannot be utilized for new operation.
Okay, and so double wall tanks were required, and do you know when double wall tank requirement went into place?
2003.
Okay, so
Well, I mean
2000
before that, but the new law is
But the
2003.
requirement was in 2003 that you do that? Okay, so you knew of that requirement, which is a
Sure.
water quality
Yes, ma'am.
requirement, not, okay.
But can I add a comment?
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm looking back through my notes, I'm trying to figure out which witness I was asking which thing. And when the property was purchased, you knew that it was a closed station?
At the time of the purchase,
At
yes,
the
ma'am.
time of the purchase, and then, let's see. And the information that was submitted to AQMD for the permit was submitted after the purchase?
If I recall, I have to double check. I don't have it in front of me.
Okay,
You have the
those are the kind of
application.
answers that
Well-
you should know. Let's see.
Let me just, while you're looking at whatever questions you have remaining, I want to just redirect the board, I know I got a little bit off topic as well, to the only relevant issue that we need to determine, and that is whether the district properly issued the permit and considered this facility as not being an existing facility. So whether whichever the school came first, that doesn't necessarily is not relevant, and also whether they should have known is not necessarily relevant. It's just whether it was properly issued.
Okay. And this is not your first job assisting someone with purchasing a gas station?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Balagopalan.
Mr. Gadari, so in 2016, you started working with the city of Inglewood.
Yes, sir.
So at that time, can you say definitely the station was in operation?
My apologies, I wasn't at the site at that time because when we started the project, we were just dealing with Mr. Bibian, and we hadn't gone to the site.
What did you represent to the city in the application?
Well, site, we have the existing site plan showing it as an existing gas station.
Right, but whether it was in operation?
They didn't request that information to answer your
Okay,
question,
thank
if that's what you're asking.
Yes, that's
No,
what
they
I'm
did not.
asking, yeah.
No, no. Thank you.
Any other questions? And I think it could be for either witness at this point.
Somebody can explain to me.
Yeah.
Please explain to me when the school was activated as a school. It's important for me to know.
Although it is not relevant to the decision as to whether,
It may be relevant to me to understand when it was activated, the school.
well, we haven't gotten to the district. I don't know if the district knows, but I understand that petitioners do not know the answer to that question.
Well, maybe the district can find out and provide it when we get to the district.
If they have that information. Any other questions for either witness? And let me ask you, Mr. Godari, Mr. Bibian, do you wish to present any other testimony or witnesses?
Yes. Oh, before our public commentator, can I?
I'm sorry, are you a public witness, or are you presenting as a witness?
She's our
You can
representative.
present any
from-
witness you wish. However, you need to take the oath. I don't believe you were here, and you,
I'm sorry, you can decide if I'm the I'm with Nicole Davies, I work for,
just please come to the,
sorry, I've never done.
you are, the petitioner can introduce any witnesses you wish to introduce, but first, if you can just.
Okay.
Raise your right hand. Do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God? Okay, and if you could, please state your name for the record, spell it, and indicate for us what your title is and who you represent.
Okay, well, thank you for your time. My name's Nicole Davies. That's Nicole. Davies, D as in David, A, V as in Victor, IES. And I've been employed with representing the ARCO and AM/PM gas brand for 32 years. For the last 15 years, I am responsible for opening sites. And I've opened up several gas-only sites in areas very similar to this one.
And can you tell us what your title is, and you work for the company ARCO?
Yes, well,
Okay.
it's owned by Marathon Petroleum right now, but I represent the ARCO brand for gas.
And if you could say what your title is, and also let us know how you are connected with the current gas station at issue.
Okay, I am the franchise recruiter. Basically, my job is to open up gas stations, find properties, work with people like Kevin that want to open up gas stations. One of my specialties in these areas that are kind of run down in lower income areas with these closed sites that are basically eyesores for the community is I make them into beautiful gas stations. We were talking about, I was just listening to all the questions, that you were asking and how it affects the community. And I understand the environmental and then the community. Of course, gasoline stations, the environment, they're not great for, but I mean, we need gas stations. But as a community, that has been an eyesore. And a lot of people have asked, I go look at the area. So when I first started looking at this site to see if it would work for our brand, it was probably 2016. So I know at that point, it was not open. We did consider it a closed gas station. I've opened up several sites, and whether they're opened or closed, I mean, we consider if they were once a gas station and that they weren't existing, and we've never had any issues. This station, one of the reasons that it attracted us to it is that it leads right into the new stadium. So not only when you it's going to be a gas station, that's not the question here. The question is the volume. customers of ARCO are in the area and in the community, they're not going to be happy. Sorry, we have to charge higher prices because we have to keep our volume below 80,000. ARCO is the value proposition, low price, help the community. You're going to have all the people that are going to be visiting the stadium that are going to be funneled driving by this store. Right now, it's an eyesore. And, you're representing that they would have to be on a much higher price to, our average ARCOs, I think, sell 240,000 gallons. So you'd be representing to the community that this station would be a very high price to try to keep it. It'd be very difficult to try to keep it under that 80,000 gallons. So I just want it to be represented that also for the community, you're adding a beautiful, you're fixing up this corner that's an eyesore and has been an eyesore for a while, based on what I saw when I looked at the facility of, the state of the canopy and the building and everything. So it's been an eyesore. And that's just what I want to say. I mean, I don't know if you can hold that to account, but this is a lower income area that's not going to be able to pay really high prices for gasoline. And in essence, when you hold down, I know probably they're asking for $3.50, $80, there has to be some middle ground that it's not going to affect the community.
Thank you. I should probably, you were asking if we could take it into account. So I should, at this time, I appreciate your testimony and your comments. We should let you know that this board does not have de novo review. We're not starting all over again and reconsidering the permit. We are merely here to determine, it's a very deferential standard, frankly. And the question is whether it was properly issued. And the really only the issue that's been presented to us is whether it was, in fact, an existing facility as is defined under the rule 1401.1. But we appreciate your comments, and in particular that in 2016 it was not open for business. So that was your testimony?
Right. And if I could add one more comment, because I dealt with both stores that we were kind of comparing, is that we had a store that was almost the exact situation. So really, I don't think it even came up because it wasn't an issue on the store that we opened up a year before he even went after this one. We didn't have any issue with the volume being, so when we did this store, and it was the same kind of situation, that it was a closed facility for a period of time, we didn't think we were going to have any issues on this location either.
Thank you. Ms. Pruitt, any questions? Okay, board members. And again, please remembering that we have a very narrow issue and a very narrow scope of review. Ms. Byrd.
I just wanted just to clean that up. You say this is the same situation, so you're saying they were both closed, they were both with current permits?
Now, I think that's what the different that we didn't realize is that.
And were they both near schools?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I think Senator had a question, and then Mr.
I
Bowman.
had a question on the table regarding when the school.
We're not up to the district yet.
Oh, let's go, all right. Sorry about that.
Did you have any questions for this witness?
Pardon?
Did you have any questions for Ms. Davies?
No.
Okay.
Well, once again, just to repeat, the gas stations in Inglewood, the charter schools in Hawthorne,
Yes, sir.
two different jurisdictions.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
1AQMD. Mr. Balagopalan.
Ms. Davis,
Sorry.
so your earliest recollection that the site was not in operation is 2016?
Yes, I do. I kind of drive the area, see what new businesses are coming in. That's how the stadium is going in. I did not notice that a school was there. I did not see.
I'm not
so
talking about the school, actually. I'm talking about the gas station.
As
How
of
far back can you recollect that the
2016, I drove the area and the store was closed. And based on the condition of the canopy, it had been closed for a while.
okay. So can you quantify a while or how many years?
I can't. I can't. I'm not
No, no, that's fine.
Scientific
Yeah.
expert, I'm
No,
just
no.
telling you that when I look at a site, it had kind of rust in the canopy.
Okay.
And
So it's been shut down for a
site.
while.
It has been shut
Shut
down.
down for a while. It was not in operation for a while. Like, can I phrase that in that way?
Yeah.
The station was not in operation for a while.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, so I will go to Mr. Bibian, Mr. Godari. Any additional testimony you wish to give in your affirmative case?
And so like I stated in my opening statement,
We'll do closing after. We're going to turn to the
oh.
district. But if you have any additional evidence you'd like to give, this would be the time. Any other testimony?
not at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. And then I'm going to turn to Ms. Pruitt for your first witness.
The district calls Nate Dickel, air quality engineer. I believe he was sworn.
Yes.
If you can spell your last name, Mr. Dickel.
Last name, Dickel.
Were you going to ask him what is?
I was. What is your title?
Air quality engineer.
And how long have you been in this position?
A little over a year and a half.
And what's your educational background?
Bachelor's degree in chemical engineering from Cal Poly Pomona.
Okay. And are you familiar with Veer Petro Partners?
Yes.
Are you familiar with the permit application filed by Veer Petro Partners?
Yes.
And did you work on that permit?
Yes.
In what capacity?
The application was assigned to me, and I basically did the whole rule evaluation and everything, and then issued the permit with 80,000 gallons per month.
Have you ever had a filling station permit before?
Yes, I think I've done over 250 or so, yes.
And did you apply the same standards as you applied to this permit, to the other permits that were similarly situated?
Yes.
Do you know whether or not there was a gas station there originally?
I could tell based on, like when I looked up the site on Google Maps, I could tell there was an existing canopy. But I could tell based on the street view it was abandoned with no dispensers or dispensing equipment. So I looked up the old address and old station, and essentially the last inspection at that site was in 2002, and the inspector's report stated that it was out of business. So from there, I treated it as a new facility.
And do you know if ever it was permitted, or the dates of the last permit?
Yes, so the last permit was issued in 1985, and then our database doesn't have the exact date. It was basically became invalid, but in our finance system, there's unpaid fees from 1994. So that what that would mean is a year later, the permit would become inactive. So about 1995.
And what happens when a facility or a permit is inactive?
So when a facility or permit becomes inactive, essentially the emissions in the NSR database are wiped clean because there's no more equipment operating there.
And how would you treat another facility or a new permit application that comes in for that facility or that location?
So new application, in that case, there's nothing previously there to go off of, so it'd be considered a new facility, new equipment.
And did you evaluate this permit as a new facility?
Yes.
Have you had other instances where there was a similar circumstance where a place was no longer in operation, and so you had to consider it a new facility?
I can't think of that off the top of my head. I've just had other ones where there's a school nearby and there's a new construction, that case, but not ones where it's an existing station that became inactive and then applied for something else.
And speaking of the school, do you know if there is a school near the facility?
Yes, it's right across the street. It's about 146, 147 feet from the center of the new proposed canopy.
And do you know what the fence line to fence line is?
The fence line to fence line, I think, is about 100 feet.
And do you consider the new permit application by Veer Petro Partners a new source application?
Yes.
Why?
I mean, there's nothing existing there to go off of. There's no active facility, so anything that's being applied for at that site is going to be subject to new source review.
Is that what would be customary here at the district?
Yes.
And do you know what the throughput was on the permit that was given to Veer Partners, Petro Partners?
Yeah, 80,000 gallons per month.
And was that based upon the fact that it went through new source review?
Yes. And it was limited by 1401.1.
Do you have an opinion about whether or not it was a good compatible use for that facility? Did you consider that?
No, I don't really think about that necessarily. I just go off like the rule. Yeah.
So based upon the rule,
Yeah,
okay.
based upon the rule, I could kind of tell that due to Rule 1401.1, it probably is not going to have a high enough throughput to like survive as they want to as a gas station. But yeah.
Is there anything additionally that you considered in when you reviewed this permit?
No, I think the Rule 1401.1 was the biggest issue, and then they had Tier 4 models submitted to try and maximize the throughput. I think there were several variations, and then the final one, we basically limited them to 80,000, so.
And have you discussed this particular permit with any of the senior members here?
Yes.
And what was their response to whether it was subject to new source review?
It was subject to new source review.
And why did you state that it was not existing?
Because there was essentially no emissions there, no equipment there. There hasn't been a permit there for, at a minimum, 17 years, but most likely about 25. So we can't treat that as as an existing site, as existing equipment.
Nothing further, thank you.
I don't know, which of you would like to ask questions? Mr. Bibian, did you want to ask questions?
Just two questions. One question. Mr. Nate just stated that he knows with the 80,000 volume cap that, or throughput cap that they're gonna be issuing, that he basically knows the site's not gonna survive, right? That's what you just stated?
I mean, you guys said it could survive, but typically, I mean, I don't know much about the gas
So you
station
just
business.
stated that.
But I mean, I don't know much about the gas station business, but typically facilities are at least like double that.
Thank you.
Did you have another question? You said you had two
No
questions.
further questions for myself.
Okay, I would like to have one designated person who asks questions. It's not a free-for-all. So if you have another question, maybe you can talk amongst yourselves and then ask the question.
Is she a member of the public or? Because
I work for ARCA, which has a contract on this site, which affects us.
Well, she was called as a witness, so you are a witness for, but we pick one representative, so, okay, so just please ask the question, but I think at this point, we'll pick one.
So, Mr. Nate, so you said that you've never encountered this specific situation with a gas station facility. You said it's kind of like,
The situation where the permit becomes inactive and the facility closes, yeah, I haven't encountered that personally.
and then did you confirm, and I know you stated that the district worker in 2002, 2003 visited the location, and in his report he said it was closed. Did you do any investigation with Department of Public Works to see if the LA County Coupa permit for the underground storage tank was deactivated, active, any investigation that sort, or just based on the district's findings?
Yeah, that stuff doesn't really matter to the district. It's just the inspector says it's out of business. There's no equipment there, so we don't concern ourselves with the other items.
And after 2002, 2003, you guys didn't have any visitations at the site
No,
to see if it's still closed or not?
objection misstates the testimony.
Can you,
He stated that there was no other visitation or at the site, and I don't believe that's what the testimony has been, or it assumes facts not in evidence.
well, you can ask a more specific question. I believe, if I heard it right, that the testimony of Mr. Dickel was that the last inspection on record that he saw was in 2002. Is that correct?
yes.
Okay, so the question is whether there's been an inspection since then?
Correct.
So, no, there hasn't been one because there'd be no reason to, because there was no permit to go inspect.
Thank you. No further questions on that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Balagopalan, you had a
Yeah,
question?
I'm sorry, may I briefly reopen? I want to.
Before we ask questions?
Yes, before you ask questions.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. I have in my hand what's been previously marked as People's A, which is the proposed rule. And I'm handing it to Mr. Dickel. Are you familiar with this rule?
Yes.
And is there anything in that rule, any part of it that would lead you to believe that,
I'm sorry, you're referring to this as a rule? Can you please
Excuse me,
explain
I'm sorry,
what
it's
this is and give some
thank
context?
you. I will ask, Mr. Dickel, what is this document?
So this is the Rule 1401.1 staff report. Staff reports are basically like background information on when they write the rule, basically what they're intending in the rule.
And based upon this staff report, were you able to determine what the intent was as?
I'm sorry, I have one more foundational
oh,
question.
I'm sorry.
Is the staff report generally before the governing board at the time of adoption of a rule?
Yes, I believe so.
And do you know if this excerpt from a staff report was the final staff report that was before the governing board?
I don't know off the top of my head, but the staff report's dated October 2005, and the rule was adopted November 2005, so.
Okay, and do you know when the governing board adopts the rule that the staff report is part of that?
I am
Motion?
not aware.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay. For reference, when you considered did you consider the staff report or the Rule 1401.1 as to understand what an existing facility was?
Yeah, we looked at Rule 1401.1 and then also looked into the staff report to just verify that it's not existing.
And what made you determine that it was not existing?
So there's a sentence in here that basically defines what an existing facility is. It's basically the fourth paragraph down, the second sentence, which says an existing facility is defined as a facility with equipment that requires a permit to operate, that is in operation, or has its application for a permit to construct/operate deemed complete prior to 90 days after the date of the rule adoption.
Thank you. And I'm holding in my hand what has been previously marked as collectively People's B 1, 2, and 3. Showing you what has been marked as People's B1. Do you recognize this photograph?
Yes.
Do you know what it is?
It's the site as of, I think, last Friday.
Last Friday?
Yes.
Thank you. And People's 2,
Yeah, it's the same site. Yeah.
as well as People's 3.
Yes, same site.
And do you see any sort of activity going on there?
No.
I'm going to just re-raise the objection I believe was made by the petitioner, and that is, as we know, when we consider an appeal, we are looking only at evidence that was available and in front of the executive officer at the time that the permit was considered. And according to the testimony of petitioner, it does not look the same.
You are correct, Your Honor, and I was addressing something that was mentioned, and I withdraw that, and I called you Your Honor.
That's fine.
Again. Madam Chair. Nothing further. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you have any follow-up questions on that I should ask before we go to the board, Mr. Bibian?
Yes, please, if I can. So, Mr. Nate, you stated that this Rule 14.01.1 was written in 2005. Is that correct?
It was adopted
It was
initially,
adopted.
yes.
And then, just to make it clear one more time, you stated that the inspector visited a location in 2002 and stated that it was inactive. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
I had a question, and it had to do with, well, first let me turn to the rule itself, 1401.1, the definition of existing facility. And it's C3 in the definitions. And I'm going to tie it to Exhibit A because I wanted to understand it better. But is it your testimony, and I think it's clear that it states here, existing facility means any facility that demonstrates the satisfaction of the executive officer that it had equipment requiring a permit to construct that was in operation prior to November 4th, 2005. And that's the definition that you go off of in the rule, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And would you say that it's a little unclear temporally, just from reading that, what it means to what was in operation prior to means?
Yeah, that's essentially why we looked for the staff report.
And that was the question. So, and then your next step, according to your testimony, was you turned to the staff report. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so, what part of it is it that it says that is in operation or has its application for permit? Is that the operative word?
Yes, so it's the fourth paragraph down, the second sentence. It starts with an existing facility.
And is this the same process you would follow if any permit came before you that had a similar issue with regard to is it existing, is it not existing?
Yeah, if Rule 1401.1 was the issue, yeah, this would be, yeah.
And did any manager or the executive officer or anyone did anyone else review that decision?
Yeah, I spoke to my manager about it, and he advised me to issue the permit with the limit of 80,000.
As a result of it being existing?
As a result of it being
Not
new
existing.
Yeah, not existing, new, yeah.
Excellent. And did you explain how you came to that decision based upon looking at the rule and the staff report?
Yes,
And your manager agreed?
yes.
Thank you. Mr. Balagopalan?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Dickel, the public notice distribution to the schools, when was that done?
Let's see. It looks to have been completed to the schools, the latest, around January 28th
Of this year,
yes, this year.
2019, okay. Did you get any comments, or did you know if the manager received any comments from either the public or from the teachers or any parents?
No, we didn't get any public comments.
Okay. When, I think you heard your testimony, when you looked up the database, it showed that, the inspection report shows that in 2002, the inspector was out there and he made a note in the file that it was out of business.
Yes.
Okay. And then you also looked into the finance system and it showed that the permit became inactive in somewhere around 94, 95.
Yeah, it has fees on, the facility's considered delinquent. It has fees unpaid from 1994, so basically 1 year after that, the permit would become inactive, and yeah.
And I think, and we heard testimony from Ms. Davis that at least 2016 that she's aware of, that there was no operation at that location. So if there's no operation at that location at that time, at least let's take 2016, we have some, between 2002 to 2016, we can debate, whether they started back or some, during the time. But was there any exposure to the school district because the gas station was not in operation?
Can you?
Yeah, I mean, with the gas station not in operation, is it fair to say there was no exposure?
Yeah, there's no emissions to.
So for a period of at least a decade or maybe 2 decades, potentially, there was no exposure of gasoline vapors to the schools or to the community?
Yes.
Okay. And then when they started back up again, what is the risk here now with the 80,000 gallons per month? And what is the pollutant that is driving the risk?
The risk, I don't know it off the top of my head. The pollutant driving the risk is benzene in the gasoline. The risk is 0.99 at the school.
0.99 in a million.
Yeah, in a million.
So you said that was done with Tier 4? That was
Yes.
based on the Tier 4 analysis?
Yes.
Did you previously do a screening analysis?
I did, and then actually, this application was submitted with a Tier 4.
Oh, with the Tier 4,
Yeah,
okay.
because I think
So-
there's residences nearby as well, so.
And that was reviewed by the division, and they agreed with how the model was run and so forth?
Yeah, it was reviewed by our modeling,
And so
department.
that's the maximum they can get to keep it below 1 in a million
Yeah,
at that location?
Yes.
Based on the configuration?
yes.
Okay. So, and looking at the definition of the rule I think Ms. Pruzak asked the question, 1401.1C3A, what was the defining language in the rule that led you to believe that this was a new site and not an existing site?
Essentially, it didn't have the rules basically stating that if you have a permit before Rule 1401.1 is adopted, then you're not subject to the rule. That's considered an existing facility, but if you don't have a permit before that date, you have 90 days to submit the application and not be subject to the rule, but after that, you're considered a new facility if you don't have an existing permit.
Did you say it requires a permit or had a permit? I mean, so potentially it could be they may have required a permit but didn't have one, right? Because the language says require a permit to operate, not has a permit to operate.
Yeah, I guess so. Yes.
Okay, but it also says was in operation, right?
Yes.
Okay, so based on that is what you made the decision, and apparently it was approved by a manager that this is a new facility, not an existing facility.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Dickel? Senator, did you have a question?
I have a question on the table regarding when the school was activated.
Well, in 2010, based upon the,
2010?
yes.
I see, okay. And the station was there prior there too? 1948 maybe,
That's what the evidence shows, yes.
right? So then would one assume, so the school came after the station was there?
Again, not relevant according to 1401.1 or the standard we're looking at. It's not a
I'm
nuisance
just
case.
trying to obtain evidence for my own convenience, and I'll determine relevance
Well,
as I make my decision.
we have to follow proper standards
As I
of
make my
review.
decision,
Can I
I'll
make
decide what's relevant. So, the school came after the fact,
After 1940, yes.
right? Now, my next question to you, sir, was any other use for that land after it was allegedly closed, the station?
I don't believe so. You can go on Google Maps and you can see like the street view back. You can change the date of the street view, and I looked like back 2007. It's still the same abandoned canopy and everything.
So that use has always been known to be a gas station.
Technically, but it didn't have any equipment there to be considered
To
a
your
gas
knowledge.
station. I mean, there's no dispensers or anything. It's not a gas
To
station.
your knowledge, it's never been used for anything else except a gas station.
Yes.
Okay, fine. Question: how did you determine the number of gallons of gas you would use to be dispensed every month? How is that a sliding scale? How do you do that?
So the Rule 1401.1 restricts them to a cancer risk of less than 1 in a million at the school, and they submitted Tier 4 health risk assessments, and our modeling group reviewed that and essentially came back with the maximum they could achieve is 80,000 gallons a month.
How did you determine this 80,000 gallons per month?
The health risk assessment?
Could it have been 150,000 gallons a month?
Then it would violate the rule.
The rules, they had a sliding scale, is that what you're saying?
It would violate the rule how? By being over the
By being
1
over-
in a million?
Yeah.
Please.
It violates the rule by being over 1 in a million at the school, cancer risk.
I raised the series of questions simply because, which is another subject, we just had a matter like this before us the other day, and I think you spoke to that issue. And you had a sliding scale also, and I think it was more than 100, right around 170,000 gallons.
None of that is in evidence in this case. We need to look case by case, and the only issue that has been raised by petitioner is whether they properly considered this to be a new facility versus an existing facility under the terms of Rule 1401.1.
Your point's made, however, the objection, the petition is requesting that they be allowed to dispense more gasoline.
That's because they're requesting to be considered an existing facility and thus a 10 in 1 million cancer risk limit would apply under Rule 1401, not 1401.1, which is for schools.
One following question. Do you survey the area to determine whether or not there's any other gas stations in that area?
No.
Again, not relevant.
Madam Chair, I can understand the point of relevancy, and the reason why I raised the question because I want uniform consistency for me sitting here.
Then you must ask the question of whether or not they're applying their processes uniformly, not asking whether there are other gas stations in the vicinity.
But the district made it a point to emphasize the fact at the last hearing that they had many stations in the area.
There is no last hearing. This is the first hearing in this particular gas station, this
case.
particular school.
On this case, yeah, correct. So,
There was a completely different issue in the other case you are referring to. It was a different gas station, a different school, and a different issue on appeal by a third party, which was the school.
I understand. In fact, you understand how I voted on that one.
Yes, in favor of the school. However, again, it's a completely different case. That is not in evidence here. You cannot raise it.
I'm just seeking for clarification in my own mind. In any case, you didn't survey the area.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Dickel? I think, Bibian, you had a question.
Mr. Dickel, you stated that based on and for the definition of existing facility, it says demonstrates to the satisfaction of an executive officer that it had equipment requiring a permit to construct. You said because there wasn't any dispensers there, it means that the facility wasn't active. So, because being a AQMD, I hold permits from the AQMD. I know you guys also monitor tanks and, Vita routers and things like that. So, as with the evidence I submitted, number one, you can see the gas station did have tanks. And Exhibit 2, the tanks were removed in 2018.
This is testimony. Not a
Yes,
question.
did you have a question?
I just wanted him to clarify the question. He said he's going based on the fact that he's saying there was no equipment only on dispensers, but there was tanks in the
Okay,
ground.
again, you're testifying. Do you have a question for Mr. Dickel that you can phrase in the form of a question for him to answer?
So your judgment or your understanding of equipment is only dispensers, is that correct?
No, it's the whole permit unit includes tanks and dispensers and the vapor processor and the Vita software. All of it is one thing. So if you have tanks in the ground, it's not a gas station. They're tanks. It's not a gas station with a permit with dispensers and everything.
So any gas station with underground storage tanks in the floor is not a gas station? Is that what you're saying?
If they have a permit, they'd be considered a gas station. But if it's just a plot of land with tanks, it's not considered a gas station. There'd be no reason to consider it a gas station.
And basically this rule, which is the number 3, just to make it clear, it was adopted in 2005. So any station that's existing prior to 2005 wouldn't meet this definition. Is that correct? Based on your knowledge working with the district.
If they have an active permit prior to the rule adoption, then they would be existing.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Dickel? Okay, Ms. Pruitt, do you have any additional witnesses that you'll be presenting?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, so what I'd like to do then is just take a 15-minute break, and then we'll come back with closing. Well, we'll ask if any member of the public, I don't see any members of the public, but we'll ask that. We'll take a closing from both sides, and then the board will deliberate. So let's come back at 11:35, okay? Please be back. We're back on the record, and since everyone's here, might as well begin. I wanted to, before we go to closing statements, I wanted to see if there are any members of the public who wish to be heard on this appeal, and I see none. Mr. Bibian, will you be giving the closing for Veer Partners?
Yes.
Okay.
So, first and foremost, I would like to thank all you guys for coming today, Mr. Holden, Ms. Prusak, sorry if I, Ms. Bride, and Mr. Balagopalan. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. And thank you to the district for coming as well. Thank you for hearing our case. Once again, like, you know, basically we've been stating since my opening statement, it is to our understanding and it is to our knowledge that the station was an existing facility. I personally don't feel that Rule 14.01.1 should be put onto this permit for this specific station, because as we can see with the permits from the city of Inglewood, from, you know, knowledge from LA County Public Works that there was existing tanks at the location. Being a gas station operator myself, I consider underground storage tanks as equipment. And due to the fact that LA County Public Works considered those tanks active, and they gave me the authorization to remove those existing tanks to upgrade them to the double wall fiberglass tanks upon my discretion, because you know, there's a rule with the State Water Board that I believe by 2025 you are able to, you have to remove your single wall fiberglass tanks and upgrade them to double wall. So being a current operator, I made the decision to go ahead and change those tanks now during this construction process. So being a business owner and being an operator, I feel like that I'm being penalized due to the fact that I went ahead and I was trying to basically do this now. If those tanks were still on the ground today, I don't think I would be in this situation, because I think it's like very surprising that Mr. Dickel stated that they don't consider tanks in the ground as active. I deal with the AQMD. I'm up to date with all the district's testing. You know, for example, they just came out with a drop tube testing for tanks specifically, notating that if emissions are being released from a drop tube, operators have to fix those drop tubes now. So I don't agree with what Mr. Dickel said on that. You know, he stated that the inspector came in 2002, 2003. This was for any facility after 2005. So this is where I'm a little bit confused on myself. I don't think that should apply. Secondly, all the equipment that I am installing at this location is going to be completely state-of-the-art equipment. It's going to be monitored with the district, with the fire department of Inglewood, LA County Public Works, whatever jurisdiction it falls under. I believe it's LA County. Secondly, I'm asking for, you know, 350,000 gallons because this is an ARCO gas station. I mean, we all live in Southern California. I'm sure each of us have seen ARCO stations driving somewhere or passing by. As we know, ARCO is the value proposition brand. The reason that I work with ARCO and the reason that I worked with ARCO on this specific location is due to the area and due to all the construction going on. If I was another branded fuel such as 76, such as Shell or any other brand, you probably wouldn't see me here. Okay, I'm part of the community. I'm part of the, you know, consumer who goes around looking for, you know, cheap gas. You know, we're all looking for something that we can save $1 here, save $1 there. And I don't think the district is considering my financial burden that I have put onto this property, okay? And with regards to the school did not protest with the districts or with our mailing or the district's mailing out. We did not hear any public comment. We put a notice to, build the station through the city of Inglewood. Notice was sent to the school, and when we were actually getting our permit in the city of Inglewood, a representative from the school came and actually was in favor for us to build this location due to this being an eyesore to the community, which is what stresses me out the most. And the most, and I know we are here for 1401, and this being in 2005, this location, Mr. Dickel's photos he took last Friday, that he submitted as evidence with the site plan that was submitted to the city, that was submitted to the community, showing that the equipment was there. I have no idea how the district was not monitoring the tanks that were in the ground up until 1 year ago. I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean, God knows how much emission was going in and out. I mean, how does the district just say there's no dispensers, we're not gonna have a permit? That doesn't make sense. Me being an operator with the district makes me saddened. I'm a member, I'm gonna go off topic for 1 second, I know you guys don't have time. I'm a member of the Porter Ranch community.
I do understand, and you have a right to say whatever you want. However, I would like it if you could keep it.
I'm gonna keep it short, yeah. Yeah, I'm a member of the Porter Ranch community with the gas leak. I live about less than a mile away from that gas leak. I attended Castle Bay Lane Elementary School, which the SCAQMD recommended the district to relocate the kids at that school. The district is basically implementing a rule on our facility that we're going to be emitting cancerous material. I feel like that we're being considered like the gas leak situation. That's not fair. I'm not asking for 10 per million. I stated earlier that I want 350,000 gallons, once again, due to the brand I'm working with. That's about 6.3 per million. I'm not asking for the maximum. So, I hope you guys understand where I'm coming from. I'm, all for the environment. If I wasn't, I would leave the tanks there. I would build the place, I would sell it. I'm in there for the long term. I'm in there to make the place look beautiful, to make it look, as environmental friendly as possible. I work with all agencies. Like I said, I have 15 locations. I've had no record of not complying, nothing like that. So once again, thank you for your time today. I appreciate it. Sorry we weren't too organized. We're usually used to, working with the district and other agencies. So this is like a first-time experience for myself. So thank you again.
Thank you, and we understand not everyone's been before us before. Ms. Pruitt, your closing.
Thank you. This is a very narrow issue on appeal. Was this properly considered by the executive officer, the permit? We've had a testimony that the station was defunct for roughly 17 years. By the way, without a permit that was active, it was inactive. Inactivity means that there are no emissions to evaluate, and any new equipment that is brought on board would be a new source and subject to the new source review. Absent any data on the emissions, it must be necessarily a new source. And once the facility was inactive, that was no longer possible. With that in mind, there is nothing else that this facility could have been considered under the new permit other than a new source. The executive officer subjected this permit to the same standard of review that any other similarly situated facility would be subjected to, and I believe that is the standard. Thank you.
Thank you. Board members, before we deliberate, I just want to remind us all, since we don't hear appeals very often, this is the second one we've heard in maybe a month. That's very rare, but I wanted to remind us because we usually hear matters like orders for abatement or variances where there's very different standard and we consider very different evidence and we weigh it differently. So in an appeal such as this one, the only issue we are considering is whether the executive officer of the district properly issued the permit with its conditions, including, in this case, the issue is the throughput. I want to remind us all that we have, in many different past appeals, developed the standard of review for an appeal, and that is we give deference towards the district's decision. And what that means for us is that we do not hear it de novo, meaning newly. We are not substituting our judgment for that of the executive officer. It's not for us to say whether we think the permit is a good idea or not a good idea, but rather whether they evaluated it correctly and properly. So again, some of the things that we heard today which are not to factor in is whether it's a good use of this particular piece of property, whether it's fair that the permit was issued as it was, meaning because of loss of money or et cetera, whether the school came first, whether due diligence was conducted by the petitioner before purchasing, whether the price of gas will be higher. These are the kinds of things that we cannot reconsider. The only issue, and I'm just going to rephrase it, is whether there has been sufficient evidence to show that the district's determination that this was a new facility, not an existing facility, a new facility that then falls within 1401.1 was not proper in light of all the evidence that was before the executive officer at the time of the decision. So any questions on the standard before we move forward? Okay. Anyone else wish to begin the discussion? And Mr. Bala.
I mean, I can start. I believe the South Coast SCAQMD applied the rule appropriately and considered it a new facility. I think we heard evidence, from the district engineer and from Ms. Davis too, that the facility was not in operation for a significant period of time. And we can debate whether it's 20 years or 2 years, 3 years now. At least 2016, it was not in operation. The rule is very clear on the definition that it has to be in operation. So it was not in operation for, so the school, the community was not exposed to the risk, the cancer risk. So this would be a new burden on the school, the children going to the school. So it's not, so the fact that had the tanks underground, it's immaterial in this case because again, it was not in operation, it was not dispensing gasoline. I think the engineer testified Google has the ability to go back and slide. He looked at 2007, and the pictures were similar, showing it was an abandoned site. But even Ms. Davis' testimony said it was clear that 2016, there was an eyesore and it was abandoned. It was not in operation. So I think this rule, when it was, is to protect again the children going to the school there, and at the same time, I think the language is put in so that it would grandfather certain facility that was already in operation when the rule was adopted. Unfortunately, I don't see that was the case here. This facility was not in operation for a period of time. So I think the South Coast SCAQMD applied it appropriately by considering it a new facility, not an existing facility.
Thank you. Ms. Bird, did you want to add? Go ahead. You go ahead.
I was just going to also go back to 1401.1 and the section that was questionable, and I think maybe not understood completely just in the reading of that section, that's C3, as to the existing facility. And I think that probably the most important thing in that section to me says demonstrates to the satisfaction of the executive officer. And representing the district today, the engineer said in order for it to be existing, operating, you would have to have all of the systems in place, the tanks plus the dispensers plus the vapor processors plus all of those things to be considered a unit in operation. And that was not the case, even if you wanted to look at the fact that tanks were there. That's not the way the district interprets it, so that's not the way the executive officer would have made that call. And for that reason, I do believe that the district has issued this permit correctly.
I think that's a very good point. And I wanted to add one other point, and that is I do think there is a case to be made. I do believe that it is a little unclear the timing that is meant if you're just looking at the plain language of the definition of an existing facility in 1401.1. It says that was in operation prior to November 4th, 2005. And so it's a little unclear just on reading that. What does that mean to be in operation prior to? Does that mean in the 40s, or does that mean at the time that the rule is adopted? But I think that that was covered by Exhibit A, because generally when as a matter of law, you're looking at a rule or a law that is not 100% clear on its face, then you can look at other types of evidence that might elucidate what is meant. And in this case, Exhibit A is the staff report, and when rules are presented to the governing board, it's presented in a package, and we heard that as testimony. And part of the package is the staff report, which explains what the staff intended. And this, I do think, clarifies 100% that they mean, it says the third line down in paragraph 4, that an existing facility is one that is, they use the word is, not was, they use the word is, in operation, or has an application for a permit to construct, and as of the date of rule adoption. So in this case, the petitioner was not able to show us that as of 2005, November, when it was the rule was adopted, that that this particular parcel was in operation as a gas station. And in fact, the testimony that we got from Mr. Dickel was that according to SCAQMD records, that the last time it was inspected in 2002, it was not operational and not all the equipment was present. And also that the permit was non-reinstatable as of 1995. I also think that it also tends towards the district acting properly, that it also consistently considered, very consistent with that interpretation of the rule, considered this to be a new source for new source review. And the only reason why it is so restrictive is because, in terms of throughput, is that it is so close to this school, 100 and something feet, 147 feet from the center of the canopy. And this was a Tier 4, and we understand Tier 4 doesn't just look at the center of the canopy, so some of the equipment was closer. So I also, looking just at the narrow scope of review of what we have, that this was proper. Senator, if you have any thoughts.
Based on the testimony presented, the petitioner was not aware of all the prohibitions at the time they purchased the property for a continued use, although it had been discontinued for a long period of time as a gas station. I think that based on the testimony here, that you're dealing with two jurisdictions. One, Hawthorne, and Inglewood. And when you're acquiring the property for that use in Inglewood, you may not have been put on notice that there's no evidence testifying that you put on notice that this would be a problem for you. But it is. You also testified that it's, in your mind, looking back after the fact, it didn't seem to be like a regular school. No buses, no so on and so on. So I raised the question, was it a chartered school? And it's been determined that the school is a chartered school. And it's been in effect for 10 years, activated for 10 years. School is the school. The question is then, was the board aware that it was not a regular school as such, but a charter school. And if they are known it to be a charter school, which they come and go, would they give a special consideration for this request? I don't know. Only the board can determine that. I would say, however, that
Can I ask you which board you're referring to?
governing board,
Oh,
only the governing board can determine that. I mean, that's an issue to be considered at some later date, obviously. But let me just say that the trend today, charter schools are in, charter schools are out. If it turns out at some later date that this charter school, because of the atmosphere in the governor's office and so on, is not there, you can always reapply. I would say to you that only Hawthorne would know, and the wave of activity regarding pressure on charter schools today and irregularities, you never know what's going to happen in that regard. So should that be the case, I'm sure the district will reconsider its position. No, I'm not sure of anything. It is likely that this district could reconsider its situation based on 1401. If you're going to apply to 1401 at some subsequent date, if the school's not there, then of course it would not restrict you or limit you, given the fact that before the school was there, we can assume, though it was not testified to, that the amount of gasoline sold was unlimited at some point in time prior to, totally unlimited. But now you got a restriction on you based on 1401, and it has been deactivated as that station and not used for the past 17 years. That is clear. That being the case, then by the definition in 1401, it is therefore new. You do understand? Thank you.
I just wanted to, for the record, there was no question as to whether this was a school or not. That's not part of the appeal, but I just wanted to point out that school is defined in 1401.1, and it says any public or private school, including juvenile detention facilities with classrooms, used for purposes of the education of more than 12 children at the school, including in kindergarten and grades 1 through 12 inclusive, but does not include any private school in which education is primarily conducted in private homes. So clearly it would fall within the definition of a school, but that wasn't an issue anyway.
No, yeah, but as you state on that point, I state on this one. Charter schools are being attacked. They're on the way out. That should be information for you.
Okay. I'm sure if and when there is no existing school,
That's right. When they don't exist.
it could come in. Any other thoughts on, Ms. Bird, did you have more you wanted to add?
I maybe I shouldn't. I just wanted to make sure it was clear that this facility, I think the senator mentioned that they had unlimited throughput, and I just wanted to make sure that everybody understood that the district does provide a throughput no matter what, as to what the limit would be, not just unlimited throughput, unlimited permits.
Indeed.
Correct. Correct. Any other thoughts, board members? Okay, then I'll offer a motion. In the matter of Veer Petro Partners, Inc., case number 6140-1, I move that we deny the appeal and rule that the permit was properly granted by the executive officer. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Balagopalan seconds. Any discussion on the motion? Senator, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ms. Bird, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Balagopalan?
Yes.
I vote yes. Motion passes 4-0. Thank you. Thank you for your presentations. Any other business, board members? We are adjourned. Thank you.